All right, so okay, so I'm gonna start a new series here on WarWolf called Morning Musings, or Morning Ramblings. Actually, Morning Ramblings would be a better one, um, just because of how unhinged the opposition is. Like, unfortunately, when you're responding to stupidity and insanity rolled together, it sounds like you're just rambling, that you're just speaking incoherently. Because when you have to address particular fucking issues with the arguments being made by others, you end up sounding insane just on your own. It's an unfortunate circumstance, but yeah, let's go with morning ramblings. So let's talk about the the poor Venezuelan fishermen that were blown up by Trump and Vance, and then Vance said he didn't give a shit. Anyways, all right, so let's just kind of let's just try to go down the list of bullshit. Okay, so the other day there was um and I'm so glad that they caught this shit on ISR, because it's like, yes, thank you. Oh my god. Fucking showing us actual tangible effects from the operations off the coast of Venezuela. That's fan fucking tastic. I love it. I adore it. ISR videos are fucking amazing, by the way. There were some great bangers that came out of Iraq and Afghanistan over the years. Probably the only good thing that came out of Iraq and Afghanistan, to be completely frank. But let's get into it. So the other day, ISR video was released of a strike in which a boat laden with unknown cargo, even though you can pretty easily make out what the cargo is, even on the thermal. Like, the fact that on the thermal you can fucking make it out pretty fucking easily. If you were to switch it to color, it'd be like definitive proof. Like, yes, they were hauling Zakolkahanas. Um, or, well, I wish it was cocaine. Unfortunately, it was probably fentanyl. I wish it was cocaine. Cocaine would be a better one. Like, please, Colombians, Venezuelans, Bolivians, like, please go back to the Bolivian marching powder. Like, come on, like, at least sell a drug here that isn't asinine as fuck. Well, I say that out loud, and I've dealt with people on cocaine before. Never mind, but still, I'd rather have the cocaine. I say this as somebody who had a cousin OD on cocaine because it blew her heart up. I That's a whole different topic in and of itself. Anyways, but so easily could make out what the boat was laden with. There were 11 individuals present on the boat. More than likely, this was to either hand off some of the people to another boat with the cargo, or they just needed to be able to unload the cargo as quickly as possible. Probably a little bit of both, given the fact that, you have U.S. forces operating in the area. It's putting them under a time crunch, so on and so forth. Now, there's this idea that, this boat wouldn't have been able to make it all the way to Miami, and it's like they weren't going to make it to Miami. That wasn't the point. One of the most common methods, or two most common methods utilized by the cartels to ship their drugs, are either over boat or underwater. And we've seen countless videos of cartel submarines operating. We know that they have perfected their designs over time. And now the submarines that the cartels, or, well, submersibles, because they're not true submarines. They're not. In order to be a submarine, you have to be able to get down to 100, 150 feet, really. That's where you're actually, a proper submarine. You need to be able to stay down there for extended periods of time. These are actually just straight up submersibles, which is why you're able to see them from the air so easily. But the point is that you have a small boat that comes off the coast, rendezvous with a larger boat. Some of these larger speedboats that they've been using for years and years and years. It's not like they stopped doing that, by the way. and or a submersible. So they rendezvous, they offload the cargo, possibly offload some extra people, et cetera, and then head back to the coast. That's how they operate when it comes to the maritime side of this, and it's really, really funny that people have somehow forgotten this stuff. Like, one of the most popular movies of all time, by the way, Bad Boys 2, highlights this. Like, the Bad Boys series overall is incredibly popular, and one of the cornerstones of the Bad Boys series is drug trafficking. And they didn't just make the shit up, they utilized actual tactics in the movie that are used by the cartels on a considerable basis. We're not talking small operations here. We're talking about large scale fucking operations. You don't get as many drugs into the country of the United States if you have small operations. You just don't. You have land-based operations, air-based operations, maritime-based operations. So this whole idea that these were just innocent fishermen, yeah, no, fuck off. Go fucking cry me a river over there. I don't want to hear you crying. If I hear you crying, I'm throwing my boot at your head. But then we have this whole idea that this was a war crime. That, oh, this is extrajudicial. And notice they flipped the script immediately once they figured out that the whole, oh, these were 11 civilians that you just killed. That fell flatter than a fucking pancake. Now they've switched to that was the extrajudicial killing of people. That's a war crime. Which, in order to be a war crime, funny enough, you have to surrender. I want people to understand this. In order to make it an extrajudicial killing of a combatant, you have to surrender. These guys were combatants that were informed because the U.S. made it very clear, don't fucking enter these waters because we will sink you if we can identify that you have suspicious cargo on board, which, again, given the ISR video, you could very clearly see that they had a shit ton of drugs bailed up on that fucking boat. You could see it. So it's like, okay, this wasn't a war crime by any stretch of the imagination. Anybody trying to attempt that narrative, I'm sorry. At that point in time, let's talk about several other war crimes that some of your favorite individuals in history have committed. William Tecumseh Sherman, anybody? Yeah, I can do this too, bitches. Now, one of the key things is that, like, Ed Krasenstein, of course, our favorite faggot of them all, is attempting to be like, oh, ICC, I'll testify. Yeah, I would love to see Interpol try to roll into the U.S. I would love to see it. By the way, the U.S. and Russia, non-signatories to the Rome Statutes, we actually, there were Interpol agents that attempted to enter the United States when Vladimir Putin was here. They literally got told, if you do not turn around, you will be arrested. Get back on the fucking plane and go back to wherever the fuck you came from. That did happen. So, yeah, okay. Congratulations. You're all playing yourselves. And as well, Ed Krasenstein, the fact that you are threatening a sitting vice president with the extrajudicial treatment by a criminal court that we are not a signatory to. Yeah, we have a word for that, bud, and I don't think you're gonna like it when I use it. Just saying, that will land you in Gitmo, bud. Because yeah, you're just being a little shitbag for the purposes of being a little shitbag. But hey, what's new? You're everybody's favorite little faggot. By the way, I just want to point this out real quick. I'm not saying he's a homosexual. I'm just saying he's a faggot. because he's clearly not a homosexual unless his kids are adopted, which, that I guess that is a possibility. It is a possibility, but I'm going to assume they're not because his kids do look like his wife a little bit. So I'm going to assume that those are in fact his children. But my point is, you're a faggot. Now, and it's quite comical to hear people continue down these lines of talk, and especially foreigners. It's like I've seen a bunch of the pro Yuki and pro Russian crowd actually try to jump in on this a little bit, and I'm laughing myself all the way to the bank with this one because it's like, okay, to the Yukis, shut the fuck up before we cut off NATO completely and completely sink your country and just let the Russians take it entirely. And in the case of the Russians, shut the fuck up. You got no room to fucking talk, you little assholes. I'm sorry. There have been plenty of little instances throughout the Ukraine war that we could happily start laying out fucking war crime charges against some of your troops. So shut the fuck up, go fuck yourselves, and have a nice day. I mean that sincerely. Have a nice day. It's actually kind of nice out today. I assume it's similar in Russia right now. So fuck off. Anyways, but the point is that at the end of the day, you are talking about groups of people that they simply because you're like, oh, they're civilians. Yeah, you would say the same about AQ or ISIS. Oh, they're dressed like civilians. Okay, congratulations. Are they intending harm upon the United States? Answer the question, Ed. Are they intending harm upon the United States? Uh-huh. That's what I thought. As soon as you become a combatant, you're a combatant, period, end of story. You don't get the same treatment as non-combatants, period, end of story. There's just no two ways about it. You're right. The only two ways there are is you're a non-combatant or a combatant. If you're a combatant, you get free hellfires to the face. If you're a non-combatant, you get to be relocated out of the combat zone. Now, one of the things that I think really needs to be talked about in regards to this situation, and unfortunately, it's going to be one of the harder things for Trump to actually start handling, is the northern border in this regard. Because as we put more pressure on the southern border, it's going to shift operations to the northern border. We already know that Canada is infested with, I believe it's referred to as the Dragon Cartel. It's a joint Chinese South American cartel that has cropped up within the past about 8 years now. Basically, the idea being is that South Americans can't buy properties from outside of Canada in Canada, but Chinese people can. So the Chinese people come in, they buy properties, they set up shop, they bring in the Mexicans to help production, they bring in chemists from China and whatnot, and they get this up and rolling. Mind you, there's this whole rightoid thing that this is like a targeted attempt by China to attack the U.S. That's not the case whatsoever. China is like the fact that China the has banned the movement of some of these precursors within the past month has definitively indicated to me that it's like, okay, so these precursors, they're not able to be moved outside of China, meaning that these precursors are most likely being smuggled out. And mind you, smuggling operations are a dime a dozen. Like they fucking happen all over the place. It just matters of what scale the smuggling operation is. So it's just a simple case of we need to keep clamping down on where the precursors are able to be sold to. For example, in the case of Canada, these precursors are able to freely be sold into Canada, which is why they set up shop in Canada. in order to import the precursors, which they can't get them directly from China anymore. So now it's a situation where they have to get them from other places, which, by the way, those precursors are produced in other parts of the world too. Um, they ship them into Canada, and then they can bake all the shit in house and then ship it down over the northern border, which that's going to be a situation and a overall campaign that is going to be much more difficult to deal with, simply because of all the moving pieces. Now, China, in their favor, have created the conditions where it's like, okay, yeah, we're not involved in this trade, we're not involved in this shit. Please don't fucking hit us. And that's one of the key things, is China does not want to get hit over this, because in reality, if we start linking back the Dragon Cartel to the Chinese government directly, that's that, yeah, no, China doesn't want that smoke. They don't want that at all, because even the Russians will be like, I can't help you on this one, bud. Like that's fucked, because Russia's already dealt with, they already dealt with the 90s, they already dealt with their drug problem. They don't want to experience that shit again. So they're like, nah, fuck you, dude. Like that's not okay. Like, and again, this whole narrative that the Chinese are trying to avenge the opium wars and shit like that. Like, okay, first off, the Americans were barely involved in that shit, and the involvement that we had was more closely linked to our civilians in country. This is like the Battle of Pinkang, for example. That was that was much more distinct than the East India Company doing their thing in China, and that was a whole another ball of wax. And the British themselves are direct, or the British and the Dutch are linked to that shit. Which, it's like, that narrative falls flat with me, rightoids, because it's like, no, like it doesn't make sense. It doesn't play out. It doesn't pass the sniff test. Now, if you want to, talk up the fact that China and us compete on a technological basis, it's like, okay, sure, but that competition is actually quite healthy for both of us, because we're constantly having to innovate. It's just a simple fact that if China is directly competing with us across the board, and yeah, you can claim that they're stealing stuff, but at the same time, it's like, okay, they steal stuff, we steal stuff. Like, look at, I'll use one of the greatest examples of all time, because the Air Force loves to tout the AIM-9, the Sidewinder. Um, but the Sidewinder is literally based off of a Russian design. Like, literally, the Russians developed an air-to-air missile that was so good that we were like, okay, what makes this thing fucking tick? Why is it so good? We fucking took a look at it. We're like, oh, that's actually a really cool idea. That's a really cool mechanism. Awesome. We're going to copy this shit and make it better. And that's what got us the Sidewinder, which then, of course, creates the conditions where the Russians continuously developing on their shit, because now the Americans can compete with them. We all steal each other's shit. Play a game called Arms Trade Tycoon Tanks. You'll understand very quickly that stealing shit is literally part of the game. But hey, it is what it is. Anyways, gonna go ahead and let this one go. Love you guys. Stop being faggots, I guess. Bye.